y'all. Welcome to another episode of There's a Lesson Here Somewhere, where we dive into TV shows and films that are published on Tubi. We'll explore the good, the bad, and find all the lessons in between. I'm your host, Manji, and for today's episode, we're going to be diving into the TV series Big Mood. Now, if you haven't checked out the previous episode, please be sure to do so. We went over the thriller film Takeout, which was pretty good. A lot of twists and turns. Y'all know I love those unpredictable movies. And if you haven't watched the full first season of Big Mood, feel free to give this podcast a pause because it's nothing but spoilers, and give yourself some time to go check out the series and then come join us for the conversation, or join us for the conversation and see if this is a series that you would enjoy and then go check out Big Mood. But let's get right to it. So, this series starts with Maggie riding an electric scooter down the streets of London. And just by this first introduction, we can see that Maggie has a more chaotic personality because she makes it to her best friend's Eddie's bar, and she literally just gives her scooter away to a stranger on the street. She was just like, "Hey, you want the scooter? It's yours." And she gave the scooter away because she didn't like the way she looked on the scooter while she was riding it. So she was like, it's not for me. So I feel like off top, we see that Maggie again is like a little bit more chaotic. And then Eddie, she appears to be a little bit more structured. I say appears to be because I feel like they complement each other very well. So now Maggie has made it to the bar with Eddie. So Maggie is trying to convince Eddie to go with her, to accompany her to her old high school, in which she convinced them to let her do a speech in front of kids, although she packaged it as the school begging her to come and say a speech in front of the kids. Eddie knows her friend very well, and she's like, "What's going on? You don't even like talking in front of people." So, long story short, we find out that Maggie has the hots for her old teacher, who is now the principal of her old high school. So, once Maggie tells Eddie that she can cosplay as her publicist, Eddie was down. And Eddie is also the driver. So, they get ready for this speech that Maggie's about to do at her old school. And just for context, Maggie is a screenwriter. So she's a writer, and I guess she had like maybe one show published. So she, pitched herself as a successful writer to the school. So she's supposed to go there and like encourage the kids to like not give up. Once Maggie and Eddie made it to the school, after Eddie was seeing how Maggie was dressed, that's when she put two and two together and was like, "You're trying to shag your teacher." Sorry, my accent is
What the fuck? What? That's what you're wearing to go to a school. I want to seem like a successful lady. That is not a successful lady outfit. That is a shag me outfit. Who are you trying to shag? No one.
I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to fuck her. So once Eddie figured it out, Maggie kind of like I guess low key convinced her that what if this teacher is actually my soulmate? Like we learned that Maggie is also turning 30 soon. So to me it's giving like life crisis. And also before they made it to the school, Eddie and Maggie had a conversation about how one of the former teachers tried to be inappropriate with her while she was a student. So once they made it to the school, that's one of the first teachers that they seen there, and he knew what he did. No one forgot what happened because he avoided them immediately. And also the person who helped her out of that situation with the creepy teacher was the teacher that or sorry, Maggie is trying to shag now. So Maggie, she pitched this idea because she thought she was going to be speaking in front of just like, a few students, maybe 20, 30. But when she got to the school, she learned it's going to be an auditorium full. So about 100 teenagers that she's going to be speaking in front of. So now she's freaking out because one, she don't like public speaking, and then two, she has to speak in front of teenagers, and we all know kids are not nice. After she learned this information, she ends up running into Mr. Wilson, who is the teacher that she has the hots for and is now the principal at this high school. And when we see him, and when Maggie and Eddie see him, we all think the same thing. He's not that hot. So Maggie was like, maybe, I don't know. I remember him being a lot cuter, but she sees the potential in him. So she's like, fuck it, we here. Let's see what Mr. Wilson is hitting for. But even after seeing Mr. Wilson, Maggie was still overwhelmed with anxiety. So her and Eddie try to make a run for it. So once they left the school, they literally ran into Mr. Wilson. He was out front smoking a cigarette. So by then they got caught and she just kind of have to commit. So Eddie went to take a call. And so that left Maggie and Mr. Wilson there, in which, they were catching up or whatever, little cute little eye contact. But when Maggie brought up the creeper teacher to Mr. Wilson and inquired as to why his ass is still teaching, Mr. Wilson completely dodged the question and ended the conversation and went back into the school. Red flag. So now it's almost time to get on stage and speak in front of all these children. And so Maggie, or sorry, Eddie is trying to like, get Maggie right for her speech. And while they're trying to prep and get over the anxiety, Maggie runs into an old classmate, which her name is Allison. So we learned that Allison has like two or three kids now and she's working at the school. And Maggie was low key judging her because she's like, how the hell did she got so many kids already? And I really love what Eddie said.
Some women spend their 20s starting a family. Some women spend them on ketamine. Both are valid choices.
Because that's right. Like who are we to judge? Live your life, woman. Do whichever. If you feel like going the route of the family, go that route. If you want to go the route of career, go that route. Or if you want to go the route of living wild and free, it's your world, baby. So now it's time for the speech, in which at first Maggie was bombing it because she was trying to be, I guess, politically correct is the right term. But when we get to like the Q&A and the kids start asking her questions and she just kind of was honest with her response, that's when they started really fucking with her, the children. So towards the end, like in the beginning of the speech, it was a little shaky, but once we got to the end, it was good for Maggie and the kids because they felt seen and it had a nice conversation. However, it was a bad look on the school because she basically said she hated school and it just wasn't a good look. Like, that's not what we brought you here for, girl. So, since Maggie was like, vulgar in her speech as well, she went to Mr. Wilson's office because she wanted to apologize, of course. And they were like going back and forth, and then they somehow end up making out and shagging right there on the principal's desk. So while they're in there doing it, Eddie is now looking for Maggie. So she went to ask the front office and they told her that she was with the principal. So she goes to the office and she hears some noise in there. So she's like, let me give them some space. So once she turns around, Allison is there and she tries to stop Allison from going into the principal's office because they in there getting busy. But Allison is like, that's my husband and these are his kids. He'll be all right. I'm going in his office. So she goes in the office with her kids and catches her husband with Maggie. And this part was funny because Maggie, she was so like, yeah, what she did was messed up. However, she was unaware. And her whole thing that she was worried about the most was the kids putting it on TikTok. And them kids was like, this is definitely going on TikTok. Needless to say, after getting caught in Mr. Wilson's office, it was definitely time to go. So Maggie and Eddie, they hopped in a car and head back to London. I can't remember where the city area was, but they went back to where they live. So this episode ends with the girls making it back home, but before they exit the vehicle, Eddie had to ask Maggie an important question, which was if she was being manic in that moment because we know what comes after. So this was kind of foreshadowing for us. So now we know mental health is involved and she could be manic. Maggie, she kind of avoided the question, but she's also checking her phone and we see messages from her psychiatrist that is asking her to come in for an appointment because she's been avoiding her. So now we know that something is up with Maggie by the end of episode 1. Let's get into episode 2. So episode 2, we learn very quickly that it is actually Maggie's 30th birthday. And so her bestie Eddie comes and surprise her with some birthday donuts. But before Eddie had made it there with the donuts, we seen Maggie looking through old photos and kind of checking up on past lovers and stuff. And all this to me is giving like life crisis. Like I feel like men be having their midlife crisis in like their 50s, 60s, while women have it a little earlier in their 30s, I would say, because we have this pressure to have a family and just be successful and put together by the time you're 30. So once you get there and your life don't reflect what you envisioned for at 30, we start second guessing everything and just like, what the fuck am I doing wrong? And just trying to figure things out as to how your life got this way. And to me, that's what it looked like Maggie was going through. Maggie is feeling so down and out for her birthday, which I feel like is really common as well for birthdays. And she kind of just didn't want to do anything. But Eddie, being her bestie, is like, can you at least go to TK Maxx with me? And if you're American, that's basically TJ Maxx. So while they were heading to TK Maxx, Eddie convinced Maggie to stop by the bar for a moment in which she was surprised by a birthday party for her. Now, Maggie was not happy about this because she really wanted to be alone. So she was not having it.
It's just because you're in a funk. It's not a funk. It's a mood disorder. Sorry, I know. But if you stay at home alone on your birthday, you're going to regret it. I know you will. Look, I promise. We're going to have fun.
And Maggie kept reminding Eddie how she didn't want to do all this for her birthday. But again, Eddie convinced her to dress up because it was a theme birthday party and to just join the fun because it's better to be around people who love her than for her to just wallow in her own loneliness at home. So Maggie was like, all right, whatever, I'll participate. Of course, Maggie's mother is at this birthday party and That just annoyed Maggie even more because Maggie's mother is so concerned with her mental health. So all her questions is like, "Are you taking your medication? What's going on with you?" Even though it's a party, she's just concerned for her baby, and rightfully so. And we also see Will. So Will was also in the first episode. He's Eddie's friend, and he is obviously crushing on Eddie, and he just does whatever Eddie wants him to do. And I love that about Will. I want Will and Eddie to be together. Maggie's response to her mother berating her with questions in regards to her mental health was that she stopped taking her medication because her medication prevents her from writing, from doing her work, and essentially from enjoying life. She knows what happens when her daughter is off her meds, so she is definitely concerned for her. Maggie even tried to call an Uber to sneak out and go home. That's how bad she did not want this birthday party, but her friend knows her and caught her. So once Maggie went back inside the bar, she went down to the basement in which there was like a rat motel. And she opened this because she's like, this party is going to be over sooner than later, whether they wanted to or not. Maggie, desperate to be by her lonesome, she hides out in the bathroom, but then some friends come and find her. But lucky for her, these friends have drugs. So she takes like shrooms, I believe, and some type of liquid. I'm not sure exactly what that was, but after taking these drugs, Maggie was on a hunt. I forgot to mention in episode one, while Maggie was talking to her old high school teacher, Eddie was on the phone with her employee at the bar in which she learned that her brother was there with the surveyor. So she learned that her brother wanted to sell the bar while Eddie, she wanted to keep the bar, obviously. Like she said, the bar is her life. So for this party, Eddie invited Maggie's ex-boyfriend because he could potentially help save the bar with one of his events. Of course, Maggie was unaware of this. So once she seen him at the birthday party, she's freaking out even more and also having even more of a crisis because she's like, what if he's the one? So while Eddie and her brother is trying to get Maggie's ex-boyfriend on board, in which they did for the most part, Will and Clint, who is Eddie's employee, they are down in the basement trying to get a handle on this rat problem because now the people who know about this rat problem know that these rats are out of their hotel. So they're trying to get rid of them by any means. Maggie felt like she wasn't out of it enough, so she continues to take more drugs right before her birthday speech, in which everything kicked in at this moment. And it's obvious that she's on something because she starts like removing things. She had on a costume and she's like taking it off, and she showed her arms, which exposed her marks, what looks like she cuts herself. So now everyone is more concerned for her. And during the speech, she ended up picking up a rat and like doing something with the rat. And of course, that freaked everybody out. So once all the people seen that there were rats running around, everyone was running out of the bar. So party over. So of course that sets Maggie's mother off. Her mom name is Jillian. So that sets Jillian off even more because she's like, what the fuck is going on with my daughter? And she kind of pressed Eddie because she felt like Eddie was enabling her to do whatever she wants when she knows that she needs to be on her meds so she won't be as erratic, I guess. And then the mom just like left because she's like, if you're not going to listen to me, I'm not going to sit around and watch you destroy yourself. So Eddie kind of figured that it was Maggie who opened up the rat hotel. So like Eddie forgave Maggie for opening up the rat motel, and then Maggie forgave Eddie for inviting her ex without telling her. So now they are happy again. They're on good terms again. And the one thing that stood out to me at the end of this episode was something that Eddie said.
So I fix it. I always fix it. I fix problems, and you have them.
That's a telltale on the type of relationship that they have, or the place, or how Eddie feels about herself. Like, she feels like she has to be Captain Stable Woman, what is what it sounds like. And that concludes episode 2. Let's get into episode 3. So episode 3 starts with the girls. They're like cuddling, watching a movie. They're watching A Beautiful Mind, which is one of Maggie's favorite movie. And she convinced herself after watching it that she could try to manipulate her bipolar disorder. And she figured that if the actor in A Beautiful Mind can do it, so can she. But Eddie is kind of listening to Jillian now, who's Maggie's mother, and is trying to convince Maggie to see her psychiatrist and to speak to someone about her disorder instead of winging it and trying to think her way out of it. Maggie listens to Eddie and she goes to see her psychiatrist. But once she makes it to the office, she learns that her psychiatrist is no longer her psychiatrist. She's been assigned a new doctor, and so now she has to meet this person. And the new doctor was a little bit out of it. We learned later on that she had a client who was a social media influencer, and that social media influencer ended her own life. And that sent this doctor into a spiral. So now she kind of micromanages all of her clients to ensure that they are okay. and they're not going to be harmful to themselves and others. So she was on one with Maggie. Maggie did admit to being off her meds for a few weeks, and almost immediately the doctor was like, we need to get you admitted. So Maggie was like, no, no, no. So she used some of the things that the doctor was telling her to convince the doctor to let her try it out for a little bit, and for the doctor to trust her enough to come back and get on meds if she feels that she failed, basically. So she asked for about a week off meds to see what she can do on her own. And again, if all else fails, then she will definitely report to the psychiatrist and do what needs to be done. But if it works out, then it works out. And so the doctor ended up agreeing, but she also has to stay in contact with the doctor. Like, the doctor was not playing with her. Then we're back at the bar with Eddie, in which this dude named Jonah pops up. So we learn that Jonah is Eddie's ex, and he's toxic, definitely very fuck boy. And so he came with like a little speech to say to Eddie, and she just sprayed him off. And she did well by doing that, because he was just trying to make it seem like he was just like new. He was so brand new. He went on like some spiritual quest and found himself, and he's different now. But we could see through all the fuckery. So of course Eddie had to share this information with her girl Maggie. So she texted her and let her know that guess who showed up. And Maggie is not very fond of Jonah, rightfully so. And she was just like, please don't shag him. I love how they say shag instead of fuck in the US. I mean, in the UK. But yeah, Maggie was like, please don't shag him. I thought it was really dope because she also offered her some support through it, because we all know how we can get caught up when dealing with another person when it comes to intimacy. So Maggie offered her some support, but Eddie was good. She was good. She ain't gonna do him. She's good. And I thought it was so adorable that Maggie actually had a baby photo of Eddie as her screensaver. Like, this is giving a soulmate connection. I feel like this is like a soulmate type friendship. Also, I thought it was very interesting how there was like a sink in the actual bedroom. It was just a sink in the bedroom. So I guess that's the way the UK is set up. But so I guess Maggie is kind of playing catch up with life. So she goes to see her agent, in which her agent kind of let her know, like, this is the last straw. Like, the only reason why we even gave you so much grace was because of your mental health issues. But now that excuse is played out. So you need to basically give us the first draft and what you promised, or you will be dropped. So now Maggie is like, oh shit, let me get on it. So she goes and recruits some students. I'm assuming like high school, maybe college students, and then kind of get them to work as like an intern and convince them to write her script for her. So she got all these kids basically at her apartment now, writing and just doing random things, because her therapist now followed her on social media. So her therapist, again, is not playing around with her and make sure she is staying up to date on her. So if she ever feels like she needs to get some quick, immediate help, she will be there to save her. So since her psychiatrist is now following her, Maggie starts to think outside the box and trying to make it seem like she's like on this healing journey. So she got the kids to put up like a green screen to make it look like she's doing yoga, but those photos was not fooling anyone. Then once the doctor seen her photo, she calls her up because she's like, those photos ain't fooling anyone. I'm gonna send some help your way. So then Maggie had to think outside the box again. And she thought about the triangle thing that the psychiatrist was promoting, and again convinced the psychiatrist that she is doing a healthy dinner date with friends and community. So this is actually a good thing that she's doing. So she was like, I'm throwing a dinner party. So now Maggie has to throw a dinner party, in which she invited, of course, Eddie and her other friends, but she also invited her agent over. So now Maggie is running around making food and dressing up for this new dinner party that she's having. And of course, Will is there, who is like both their friends, but mainly Eddie's friend. And then we learn that Will has an allergic reaction to something in the food. His face swells up. So Eddie, goes out with him to accompany him to the hospital. But when he was outside, Jonah shows up again.
We need to talk. Yeah, I'm a bit busy right now.
I can save your bar.
I'll be all right by myself, Eddie. You stay.
No, Will.
Instead of going with Will to the hospital, Eddie ends up staying with Jonah while Will goes off alone, in which she got caught up with Jonah. Then we head back to the dinner party and we see it's just chaos. It is chaos. So, although she didn't invite the students to the dinner party, they just kind of never left. So, once the student writer learned that her agent was there, she tried pitching to her. And then shortly after, the agent learned that that student is actually writing Maggie's script. So once the agent learned that, she was just, all right, enough's enough. And I guess it's safe to say that she dropped Maggie and stormed out of the party. And instead of trying to make it right, with the agent, Maggie invites over a guy whom she's been texting on Tinder for the past hour. So now this random guy shows up for dessert time, and it's just crazy at this point. And like her friends kind of just have to stand up and just like get shit situated. So they kick the dude up out of there, and I love how homegirl did that. Look how she kicked this motherfucker out.
You walking yeast infection. You've got two options. Either you fuck off now, or you fuck off after I've smashed your remaining teeth down your throat. Up to you.
So the friends got him up out of there and then just kind of got Maggie to bed and helped cleaned up and everything, doing what friends do. They also stayed the night and slept over to ensure she was okay for the night. Like I love these friendships. Like this is what friendship looks like for me. So once Maggie woke up in the morning and just realized what the fuck happened, that's when I feel like she kind of was like, okay, yeah, I need help. So Maggie is a woman of her word, so she reached out to the doctor and let her know like, hey, that was a lie. I'm actually a mess and I think it's time for me to get back medicated. And then she goes and of course let her mom, Jillian, knows that she's back on the med. So now everyone's happy. Like Eddie's happy, Maggie's happy, and the mom's happy. And yeah. And that concludes episode 3. So episode 4 starts with Maggie heading over to the bar and asking Will to run the bar because she wants to take Eddie to like this festival thing. Eddie runs the bar, but Will do anything for Eddie. So she knew that he would be the perfect candidate for this job. And she convinced them because she was like, "We have the same enemy, Jonah, because I told you Will is in love with Eddie and Maggie hates Jonah, and Jonah is the one person that's keeping them away from Eddie." So they both was like, all right. So that's what got Will to do it. So then we cut to the scene with Eddie and Jonah, and they are getting out of bed. Obviously, they shagged and probably been shagging for a minute. We kind of get a gist, I feel, of Jonah's character. And again, he's that fake spiritual dude. And everything he was just saying, I was just like, ugh, ugh. But the thing that got Eddie was that Jonah said that he had the funds and the people ready to buy her brother's half of the bar. So if Jonah buys the bar, that means that Eddie can keep the bar. So that is the main factor into entertaining Jonah. So while Eddie is speaking with Jonah, she gets a text message from Maggie in which Jonah was like, she's probably going to need help or need an emergency, in which she did say that to her. It was like, help, it's an emergency. And of course, Eddie being Cap to save a woman, she hurries up and scurries over to see what Maggie needs help with. In which, to her surprise, Maggie is just wanting to take her to another city for this festival. Eddie called it a witch festival, but it's like a pagan festival, and it's like supposed to be surrounding your rebirth, so being reborn. And she just wanted again to just get Eddie away from Jonah because Jonah is bad news. So they take the train to the city, and I want to note that once they got off the train and met up with the other friend from the pagan festival, this is where Maggie sees the creepy kid for the first time. And no one really says anything because I don't even think anyone questioned it. They were just like, yeah, kids be dressing up or whatever. But this is the first time we see this kid. Then Jonah calls Eddie and, manipulate her some more. And it was basically like, yo, you mean to tell me you left with Maggie to another city when I got my people on the line ready to sign the paperwork for your bar? Oh, you're not serious about this. You're not serious about this. And Eddie's like, yes, I am serious. I am. I will be on my phone. You can call me at any time. I will answer. I will answer. Like, I would have been like, show me the money. Show me this paperwork that you got hovering over my head. Show me. Show me. Because he didn't say shit. He was just talking, but she believed it all. So for this pagan festival, I guess they usually do like some sort of drumming ceremony. And two of the girls who were a part of the original drum group didn't make it. So now we need Maggie and Eddie to be a part of it. So they get up in costume and they head to the festival that took place in like a forest. And this festival low key is probably something I would go to. I ain't gonna hold you. Now with the festival being all on rebirth and everything, we got the girls walking to the forest and they're having a conversation about kids, and which Eddie was like, I do want kids. And then Maggie's like, I didn't know you wanted kids. And at this point, we can see where the relationship shifts in this episode because Eddie is obviously annoyed with Maggie because it's like, you don't got to know everything, I guess, type of energy. You can just see that this is the moment where the shift in the friendship took place. Maggie offers Eddie some edibles, and while Eddie is opening the edible bag so they can consume it, Maggie gets Eddie's phone and blocks Jonah, so he ain't gonna be interrupting the day anymore. So after they're doing what they do, they end up having another conversation, and Maggie is trying to convince Eddie that she is so worth so much more than what Jonah has to offer, and Jonah will never be able to deserve a woman like Eddie. And then that's when Eddie informed Maggie that he's going to buy half the bar, and that's why she's dealing with him. So now Maggie's like, fuck. Fuck, I just blocked him on her phone. Fuck, 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 fuck. But they are good friends. So, of course, Maggie informs Eddie that she blocked Jonah on her phone, and that's the reason why she hasn't gotten any response from him. And before they could even bicker about this, like this other group comes up, this other drum group comes up and they spot Maggie. Apparently, this was Alice's cousin. She was trying to turn up on Maggie for, effing her cousin's husband, but the drum circle leader lady, she came and stepped in. Long story short, they started squabbling. And while all this is going on, Eddie is focused on this bar. So she unblocks Jonah and calls him back. And by this time, Jonah already had another girl up in the crib. She hear her in the background. You see what I'm saying? She was gone for like a total of 5, 6 hours and he already replaced her with another woman. And he's like, well, you lost your chance. You lost your chance. If that ain't a sign that this dude was never a man of his word, like he was not honest, he was never going to sign the other half of the bar. He was going to use that over her head for as long as he possibly could to get as much as he can out of her. But Eddie, being frustrated, she blamed all of this on Maggie and basically blamed Maggie for her losing her bar because she felt that Jonah was her last hope for the bar. So now this friendship is 100% on eggshells. Also, note that while they were at this fest, it was this wizard dude. He was like the grand wizard, I guess. He just kept being attracted to Eddie and just kept saying, like, you're so full of life. So after seeing that, and then also Eddie was throwing up throughout half this episode, I'm like, this girl might be pregnant. But like I said, Eddie was not having it with Maggie. So after all of the things with Jonah and stuff, she kind of just told Maggie, like, hey, I'm going to need some space. Like, we need to be apart for a little bit. So once Maggie makes it back home, before she enters her apartment building, she turns around and sees that strange kid again. So now Maggie is like, what the fuck is going on? Because there's no way this random kid was here in this other city at this witch festival. And then now it's here at my home. So now she's a little bit concerned, and then we go to Eddie, who is taking a pregnancy test, and she is, in fact, pregnant. And that's the end of episode 4. So for episode 5, we see Maggie and Eddie at their friend's kid's birthday party. And then Maggie, she's just a little bit out of it a little more this episode. And so she's trying to amend things with Eddie, completely negating the fact that Eddie asked for space. And she's like, hey, like, you want to come over and watch shows? And Eddie is focused on this new baby that's in her stomach and figuring out what the fuck she's going to do with it. So she's like, I said I need space, and I mean it. So she goes and throws up in her friend's house and end up going to the bathroom to call around to some abortion clinics. She couldn't find anywhere that would give her an appointment. So her only option is to pay a little bit more money for a private clinic, I believe it was. So she finds this clinic called Girl Borscht, I believe. It was supposed to be like a hip, trendy abortion clinic, which was a little strange, but they had an opening. So Eddie went to go check them out almost immediately. So we get to Girl Borscht. What made it even more strange, they were trying to be a little bit too progressive in this clinic because they had like the male dude like helping her, which like, yeah, men can work there, but it's like, for this particular thing, I think we need a woman in this position because he's like, she's talking about like cramps or some shit, some woman thing. And he was just like, oh, I could relate. And it was just awkward. But long story short, Eddie learned that it's going to cost her £800, sorry, to get this handled. I say Eddie appeared to be structured because although Maggie is a bit more chaotic and Eddie appeared a bit more reserved, when it comes to money and savings, Maggie, I feel like, is the more adult type compared to Eddie, who don't believe in savings. She believes you're a lunatic if you save money. So now she's in this position where she needs $800 and she don't have it because she don't save any money. But now she has to figure out how she's going to get it. But she's like, you know what? I could get £800. That's light work. I could get £800. So now she's off to figure out how she's going to get these £800 to terminate this pregnancy. Eddie had the brilliant idea. I'll just get this money from a man. So I'm not sure how she connected with all these men, but she recruited a whole bunch of men who were interested in her and basically went through them one by one to see if they were a candidate to help her get £800. She ended up not being pleased with any of them, but spotted a rich guy in a corner of her eye at the bar. So she went and talked to him, and if they were vibing and stuff. So she was like, okay, this is a potential candidate. So he's like, yo, I have my employees over here. Let me introduce you to them. So Eddie goes over there to, to meet his employees, and one of his employees is her friend. So she kind of just like, oh fuck.
I mean, God forbid, for once in my life, I tried the easy way out, right? God forbid I tried to rely on my perfect face and ass for once. But no. I'll keep doing things the hard way.
And I just relate to this moment so much. Because as someone who decided to not go the route to use my beautiful face and my nice ass to get what I want, when I do decide to do it, it just never works out in my favor. That's why I'm just like, how do these girls be doing it? Because this shit do not be working for me. Please teach me your ways. But I felt what Eddie was saying in this moment. So Maggie shows up at the bar, still trying to mend her friendship with Eddie, or just to make it back like it was, because she missed her bestie. But Eddie's focused on getting his 800 pounds, so she's still like, I need more space. I need more space. So now Eddie is like, let me ask my mom. So her mom is like selling these skinny scarves thing, and she was throwing an event. So Eddie shows up to try to get on her mom's good side to see if she will help with 800 pounds. And then she also brought up the bar thing. Her mom is not a nice person at all. She didn't want to help Eddie with the bar because it belonged to Eddie's dad, in which she probably is not still fond of, even though he's no longer living. And she just wasn't really fond of Eddie at all. And she ended up just like not helping her at all. She didn't even give her the $800. I mean, she didn't know what the $800 was for, but still, like, if your daughter says she's in a bind and need this, I feel like it's only right to assist her. But instead, she like made it worse. She put on blast in front of the event and said, announced in front of everyone how they're going to tear down a bar and turn them into lofts, turn them into apartments. And that pissed her off, and she ended up storming out. And she almost got the money from her brother, but since it was her brother and her mom who was on the same page of what to do with the bar, she kind of didn't want anything from any of them. So now she storms off and back at ground zero when it comes to getting this 800 pounds. Once she storms out, her brother follows her and just trying to, I guess, tell her something that she needed to hear. He basically was like, yo, you don't want this bar, because if you wanted this bar, you would have done what was necessary to upkeep it. You would have figured out how to keep the funds invested into this bar. Like, you would have did what needed to be done if you truly wanted this bar. And he basically said she was like a self-proclaimed martyr, and basically, you have to save a woman. She'd feel like she's not enough unless she's helping someone. And since her dad passed, she felt like now it was her duty to preserve his dream, which was that bar. So I felt like she did need to hear that, but of course, this was not the right time, because fuck all y'all. So after this, Eddie kind of just go and sit with that at the bar. And of course, Maggie shows up because Maggie was at the event as well. So she seen what was going on with Eddie and her mom and her brother and whatnot. So, but by the time Maggie shows up to the bar, Eddie actually wants to see her because she needs a friend in this moment. She just like hugs her and was just like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't have been there for you," is what Eddie says. Which again, I thought was interesting. Maggie, I don't think we see her apologize at all during this series, while Eddie is apologizing to her for not being there for her. I thought I feel like the brother was spot on with what he said to her. But anyway, Eddie informs Maggie that she is pregnant. And of course, Maggie is freaking the fuck out. Like, what the fuck you mean you pregnant? Like, what are you gonna do? And so Eddie is like, I need 800 pounds. And Maggie's like, I got 800 pounds. It's yours. And I'm going to be there for you when you go and get this handled. Like, I'm going to be your caretaker. I'm going to be there for you because you've always been there for me. And which this, I feel like, was a big deal for Eddie, because again, as someone who is always the savior, this is like the moment, probably the first time in her adult life, where she's like, hey, I need your help. I need you to be there. Like, Eddie laid it flat on the table, like, I need you there. And Maggie's like, I'm going to be there. So while Maggie is agreeing to be there, she's also seeing this strange kid running around everywhere. And now you can tell that Maggie is like actually concerned for her own health, and she wanted to share. This is me, of course, assuming. Like, you can tell Maggie wanted to share this with Eddie, but again, with this being such a vital moment for Eddie to even ask for help and finally give Maggie the opportunity to help her bestie, I feel she took it as a sign to kind of put her own shit on the back burner for once and just try to help her friend in this moment. I feel like she should have said something, but she did not. And that concludes episode 5. So for the last episode of season 1, so while they're just like laid up in the bed, Eddie makes comments on Maggie's appearances because she does look a little different. She's noticing that she's a little bit more forgetful. She made comments on her being pale, and she also has like these scabs on her face. So something is up with Maggie, but she's not owning up to it because she's like, don't worry about me. We're here for you. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm fine. Maggie leaves Eddie crib and then is automatically at home. And then that's when she starts to notice the blotches on her skin, and it's like it's getting worse. And while she's back at home, there's more than one child now. There's like I think there's two of them, and they're dressed in like Loki like a leprechaun, and they're like jumping around her and just bothering her. And so she ends up just asking them like, "What the fuck? What do you want from me?" And they were saying how they wanted blood. So she took this as a sign, and she literally threw out every sharp object that she owns: scissors, knives, anything sharp. She ended up throwing them out the window and hitting someone, but at least she got them out the crib so she won't self harm. Now we see Maggie sitting down on the bed and she's like texting something, and then she ends up at the bar. And then at this point, she's Googling, like, are you schizophrenic? Like, symptoms of being schizophrenic, because, like, what the fuck is going on? Like, how is she going from these place to place and have no recollection of getting to these places, or what happened in between this time from when she was here at this place and now where she's currently present? But now Maggie's at the bar with Eddie, and again, Eddie is reminding her about this abortion appointment, and also like, hey, you gonna be there, right? And she's like, of course I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna be there right after I go see Coco, who is her schizophrenic friend who lives in a different city. So she's like, I'm gonna go see her today, and then I will be at your appointment tomorrow. Eddie kind of came to terms and being okay with selling the bar, and she decided that the money that she's going to make from selling the bar is going to be like the perfect opportunity to get away, go to LA, and just live lavish for a little bit. And of course, she want her right hand girl there. So her and Maggie were basically planning a trip to take immediately after she gets things handled at the clinic, and then also once everything is confirmed with the bar being sold. Next scene, we see Maggie like laying on the bed, look like she fresh out of the shower, and she gets a text from Eddie asking like, "Yo, you coming to the clinic?" And she's like, "Of course, of course." But then Maggie gets up, gets dressed, and she goes to see Coco. So while Maggie is at her friend Coco's crib, so Coco was a friend that she made while she was like in a mental health hospital, and Coco's mother is kind of infatuated with mental health, and so she assists Coco through everything. I say all that to say I feel like her mom, Coco's mom, is really good at just identifying signs as to when someone should go seek help, in which she kind of seen what Maggie was doing. So Maggie kind of made it seem like she was inquiring in Coco's experience so she could write about a schizophrenic character. However, the mom seen right through it, and she realized that Maggie was inquiring about herself. So once Maggie was getting ready to leave and she left the house, the mom, Coco's mother, caught her outside and was like, "You should probably see someone." And she's like, "Oh no, like I'm already taking my meds." And she's like, "But sometimes things change. You should at least go and see if your levels are correct." And just trying to encourage her to seek help because obviously something is wrong. And then Maggie was like, I'm fine, I'm fine." And then the next scene, she's like in this fucking field in the middle of nowhere. Not only is she's in the middle of nowhere, but it's also nighttime. And now she has like another, I guess I don't even know what to call these imaginary people. I don't know what to call these people, but there's like the doctor. She started to see some medical doctor along with the two kids. So now she's like, there's three beings that she's seeing and only she can see. I feel like this last episode was very insightful. I feel like it gives us kind of a taste of what it's like in the mind of someone who is schizophrenic and just the things that they have to deal with on a day to day. It was very eye opening. Next scene, we're at the abortion clinic, in which, of course, Eddie is there solo dolo, and she's trying to get a hold of Maggie, in which Maggie is responding, but she is just not there. So she ends up still needing to go through with it because the clinic's going to be closed. And it's just long story short, today was the only day that she can get this done. So she proceeds with the procedure without Maggie being there. So yeah, Maggie is in the field at night. Well, I think it's like daytime now, but she still has her three imaginary friends, and now she's trying to hitch a ride. A car pulls up, and of course, being a woman hitching a ride, you already have your own concerns. And then the guy that's driving, he does look a little creepy. I kind of felt bad afterwards, but he did look a little creepy. Like, yeah, he looked creepy. But Maggie also looks creepy because she's like out of it, and then she's also speaking to imaginary people. They're both scared of each other. The driver, the male driver who picked up Maggie, and then Maggie who got help. So it got to the point where Maggie just ended up like getting out of the car, and she learned that the dude I think he said his wife passed, so he was just trying to do a good deed. He thought that Maggie was like a runaway teen, so that's the only reason why he helped her. So Maggie, she ended up getting out of the car and running to the train station. Yeah, I thought that part was funny. So Maggie finally made it to the train station, which she made it back to her city and ended up going to the clinic, in which she learned that Eddie was in yesterday. So Maggie is a whole day off. And instead of her being there for Eddie, Eddie had to call on Will to be there for her in her time of need. So now everything kind of makes sense because it was going back and forth from scene to scene. Even I was confused as to what the fuck day it was and what is going on. So now things are starting to become a little bit more clear. So now Maggie finally realized that this is a huge problem and something is definitely wrong with me. We flashed back to when she was at Coco's mom crib and Coco's mom was like offering to take her to urgent care, in which she's like, "No, I got to go." And she's like, "I got to go to hang out with my friend tomorrow for Tuesday," or something like that. And the mom was like, "It is Tuesday." But she wasn't listening. So basically, instead of being at the clinic with Eddie, she was at whatever city that was with Coco. So she was a whole day off. So while she was texting Eddie saying, "Of course I'm coming," Eddie was actually at the clinic at that time, waiting for her to show up while she's getting ready to go visit Coco, not realizing a whole day has passed. And we see it. We see her laying down on the bed and then the kids just jumping. She is just completely out of it. Not to mention, she could barely speak. So that was another thing that made her a little bit creepy with the guy in the car. And then also when she was talking to Coco's mother, she literally couldn't even think of the word like talk. Like the thought process and speaking, it was just something is wrong with her. And it was pretty obvious. Next scene, we see Eddie and Will. Will is keeping Eddie company after having that procedure done. And he accidentally said, "I love you." And Eddie deflected like a bug. She was just like, "Ha ha, you so crazy." Eddie, Will is the one for you, girl. He is the keeper, okay? So Eddie was telling Will how she's waiting for someone to come pick up the pinball machine from the bar. She figured, like, she could sell it to have some more money for her trip. Turns out it was her brother who bought the pinball machine, which I thought that was really cute. Nice little makeup for the siblings. Like they're finally on the same page and they forgive each other and understand each other. So that was a little cute ending to the whole bar fiasco. And then Will kind of also gave her a little bit of encouragement in terms of focusing on herself and that Maggie will be okay. Everyone is kind of giving Eddie the same advice when it comes to friendship is to focus less on Maggie experience and Maggie emergencies and focus more on you and Eddie and what she got to do. So I think Eddie is taking all of this into consideration as well. So Maggie leaves the abortion clinic and then she makes it over to the bar and which it says closed forever. So she has no idea what's been going on because she's been just so out of sync. And so Will opens the door and she's like, "Where's Eddie?" And he's like, "She's gone." And then in this moment, she was trying to like tell him, like, there's something wrong with my brain. Like, there's something wrong. Like, I didn't do this intentionally. I didn't leave her hanging intentionally. That's what she was trying to say. But like I said before, she has a problem like getting her words together and just speaking. And so, but at this point, like, there's no empathy for her. Like, I guess she used the mental health excuse for too long. So everyone is just not with it anymore. And Will was just straight up like, "Yo, if you need help, you need to go get help." So she turned around and was getting ready to leave, but we see Eddie getting into the car. She's about to go on her trip. She got her suitcase, the trip that Maggie was supposed to go on too. And at this point, again, Eddie is taking everyone else's advice and putting herself first. So they made eye contact. And I think Eddie was waiting for Maggie to apologize to say something, but Maggie literally just couldn't say anything. And when I first, because I watched it twice, I watched these films and TV shows twice so I could know what I'm talking about, make sure I catch what I need to. So when I first watched it, I just seen it as kind of Maggie low key being selfish and just, I guess, so self absorbed. She couldn't figure out how to apologize or even speak up in that moment. But then it hit me, she's dealing with a mental disorder. And that could very well be why she couldn't speak in that moment because when she was at the bar at this last episode, this was like the height of whatever is going on with her. So she truly couldn't really speak. She couldn't even ask for help in terms of directions to the abortion clinic. And so she was just there crying. But again, Eddie wasn't having it. She got in a car and she took off for her trip and just left Eddie hanging there at the bar. And that concludes the last episode of Big Mood. Thankfully, I seen that we are getting a season 2 and it is on the way. And I am so thankful because I need to know what's going on. I want these girls to make up and I want Eddie and Will together. But let's get into the lessons. I feel like there are two main lessons. I mean, there are of course so many lessons we could learn throughout this series, especially when it comes to just friendships and dating and life in general. But the two lessons that stood out to me the most was respect your friends' boundaries. Like when we go back to the birthday party with Maggie and Eddie throwing a surprise birthday party for Maggie. Maggie was very adamant on not doing that and not being surrounded by so many people, and Eddie was super insistent on it because she believed that that's what she needed. I am taking into consideration that Eddie said that it would have been 10 times worse if Maggie had spent her birthday alone. However, I feel like you didn't have to go that extravagant. Like if your friend says she didn't want all this and didn't want to be around a whole bunch of people, and you know she got a mental disorder on top of that, and you still didn't want her to be alone, I feel like something with just maybe them two would have been a little bit more appealing for Maggie. Something a little bit more low key, because for someone who didn't want to do something for their birthday, she definitely went above and beyond. And it's arguable that Eddie did this to try to get connected to Maggie's ex so she could try to save her bar. So she had like her own self fulfilled intentions when it came to throwing this party for a friend. So I feel like that's the number one lesson right there. Respect your friends' boundaries, regardless if you feel that what you think they need is better for them. Respect your friends' boundaries. That's the first lesson. The second and last final main lesson for me that I got from this was your mental health is your responsibility. And this show resonated with me so much, especially as someone who is dealing with depression and anxiety and things like that. I, yeah, that's a hard pill to swallow. And that is, again, your mental health is your responsibility. So you need to do what you need to do in order to make that shit right. Granted, the trauma and whatever it is that you experienced that ignited that mental illness was not your responsibility. That was not on you. However, since it impacted you the way that it did, it's up to you to do what you need to do in order to live the life that you want to live. So bring it to this series, like throughout the series, Maggie, everyone has been saying how Maggie's been using her mental health as an excuse. Granted, Maggie was just trying to figure her own shit out. However, it was at the cost of the people who loved her and of the people who was trying to make sure she was right, because as soon as she seen that kid, as soon as she felt like things were off, she should have went and spoken with her doctor who was ready. That doctor answered before the phone rings, like she was ready to help her. But I feel like that was a hard pill for Maggie to swallow, just to change it, because not only was she already dealing with being bipolar and depression, but now this new thing has arrived, and she probably didn't even know what to label it as, although she did have an idea. When as soon as she started Googling, do I have this? That should have been the point where she, instead of putting that in Google, she should have been asking that to her doctor. Since she didn't act on it immediately, it costed her friends. It costed her her friends in this moment. Granted, hopefully everybody learns what's going on and they could, like, amend the friendship. But unfortunately for Maggie, it cost her her best friend at this point and essentially her life. Like, she's gonna have to rebuild from ground zero. That ain't nothing she can't do. That's for certain. But this could have been avoided, or we could have got a different conclusion had she prioritized her mental health. I'm going to stop there before I go too deep. But the main lesson is, again, you guys, your mental health is your responsibility. You're not responsible for the things that happen to you and the things that may cause these mental illness, but it's up to you to take care of it and to take care of yourself, because you, regardless of who loves you and who is there for you and blah, 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 you are the only person who can change you. You are the only person who can truly do for you. So if you have any mental health issues that you've been avoiding or any concerns or whatever, this is your sign to go get checked out, to speak to someone. I'm going to stop there. Now, if you made it all the way through, that means you fuck with this podcast. So go ahead and give us a like, and remember to subscribe and share this podcast with a friend. Our next podcast episode, we're going to be covering a film called Pod Generation. It's a little sci-fi futuristic type film, but it's pretty good. Of course, it's available on Tubi. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of There's a Lesson Here Somewhere. I see y'all next week.